Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into React development today, specifically React hooks.
Hooks. Yeah, always a fun topic.
I know, we've got a ton of articles and code snippets to go through today.
Awesome. I'm excited to unpack all of this.
So, to make this deep dive even more engaging, we'll be using the world of Planet Codex from one of the sources as a guide.
Planet Codex, huh?
Yep. Imagine a planet completely powered by this substance called Reactium.
Reactium. Interesting.
It's constantly under threat from these things called bugs and defended by the Planetary Defense Corps, just like the apps we build.
I like it. It's like our apps are little planets that need constant protection.
Exactly. And to guide us through this, we'll follow the journey of Arin, a new recruit in the Planetary Defense Corps.
Okay, so Arin is like our React newbie.
Yeah. And just like any new recruit, he's got to start with the basics. So first up is useState.
useState, the foundation of it all.
Right. The source describes it as managing the internal energy or state of a component.
Ah, state management.
Wow.
Essential for any dynamic application.
Totally. They even have these things called Reactium crystals that can store and control energy.
Reactium crystals, that's a cool visual.
I know, right?
It really helps understand how useState works, like having a container to hold your data.
Exactly. So you have a variable that holds a piece of information, right? Like the score in a game, or whether a user's logged in. And useState gives us a way to not only store that information, but also to change it.
And the best part is, React can track those changes, so we can update the interface accordingly.
So it's like adjusting the energy flow in one of those Reactium crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Could impact a whole sector of Planet Codex.
Precisely. And the syntax for useState is pretty straightforward.
Straightforward. You think so?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, walk me through it then.
Okay, imagine Arin is holding a Reactium crystal, and its energy level is set to calm.
All right, Arin's got his crystal set to calm.
In code, we would write that as const energy, set energy, useState calm.
Const energy, set energy, useState. Calm? Okay, let's break that down. We're creating a variable called energy.
Yeah.
And we're setting its initial value to calm. But what's this set energy?
Ah, that's the magic. Set energy is a function that allows us to change the value of energy.
So if Arin runs into a bug and needs to raise the alarm,
We got it. We can use set energy alert.
it's a set energy alert. Got it. And then React would update any part of our application that depends on that energy level.
Exactly, like a chain reaction.
So simple, yet so powerful.
Right. This basic mechanism underpins a lot of dynamic and responsive user interfaces built with React.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the next challenge. Planet Codex doesn't exist in a vacuum. Just like our applications need to be aware of their surroundings.
Right. The real world is constantly changing, and our apps need to keep up.
And that's where useEffect comes into play, right?
Exactly. If useState is about managing internal state, useEffect is our connection to the outside world.
So, like sensors on Planet Codex, monitoring for energy fluctuations or weather patterns.
Exactly. Anything that could impact the planet, our app needs to know about it.
And useEffect lets us do just that. Update our app based on things happening outside our components.
Think of building a newsfeed. It needs to fetch the latest articles from a server.
Okay, yeah.
useEffect lets you do that. Fetch the data and update your app with those new articles.
Or what about a timer that needs to update every second?
useEffect can handle that as well. It's like a dedicated team constantly monitoring the situation.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we tell useEffect what to look for, what changes to react to?
That's where the dependency array comes in.
Dependency array. Sounds a bit technical.
It's simpler than it sounds. useEffect takes a function with the code we want to execute.
Okay, so the code that needs to run when something happens.
Right. And a second argument, which is an array of values that we want to watch.
Values to watch.
Yes. Whenever any of those values change, boom, the function inside useEffect runs.
Okay, let's imagine a chat application, and we want a notification whenever a new message arrives.
Perfect example. We could use useEffect to listen for changes in a variable that holds the number of unread messages.
So our dependency array would include that unread message count.
Exactly. As soon as a new message comes in, that number changes, our useEffect triggers, and boom, notification.
I get it. It's like a tripwire alerting us when something specific happens.
Precisely. But we got to be careful what we put in that dependency array.
Why? What could go wrong?
Well, too many dependencies and our useEffect might run more than it needs to.
Oh, and that could slow down our application.
Right, performance issues. Or we could forget a crucial dependency.
And
Then our application might not update correctly, leading to bugs.
so it's all about finding the right balance. making sure useEffect only runs when absolutely necessary.
Exactly. Mastering this aspect of useEffect is key to building performant and reliable React applications.
Okay, so we have useState for managing internal state and useEffect to keep us in sync with the outside world. But what about sharing data between different parts of our app? The source material mentions prop drilling.
Ah, yes, prop drilling. It can be a real pain.
They describe it as energy losing its strength as it passes through each node.
It's like trying to send a message across planet codecs through a long chain of intermediaries.
Inefficient and messy. So what's the solution?
Use context to the rescue.
Use context. Tell me more.
It's a hook that lets us share data directly where it's needed. No more passing props through tons of components.
Like a direct line of communication for the Planetary Defense Corps.
Exactly. No more energy trickle. It goes straight where it needs to go.
Sounds like a game changer.
Oh, it is, especially for data that is used across your whole application. User authentication, theme preferences, things like that.
So no more passing those props through a dozen components,
Yeah.
just use context.
Exactly. Makes everything so much cleaner and more efficient.
Wow. This is amazing. We've gone from managing internal state to reacting to the outside world to streamlining data flow.
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
And I feel like there's so much more to discover with React hooks. What happens when the data we're managing gets more complex?
Ooh, good question. That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. But before we dive into that, let's recap.
Sounds good.
useState manages our internal state. useEffect connects us to the outside world, letting us react to changes.
Right.
And useContext lets us share data efficiently across our application. We're building a whole arsenal of tools for crafting truly dynamic and resilient user interfaces.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, are you ready to take on the next level?
Absolutely. Bring on the next challenge. So you were saying things get more interesting when the data gets more complex. What did you mean by that?
Well, that's where we start talking about useReducer.
useReducer. I remember that from the source material. Something about multiple energy streams and outcomes.
Exactly. And, while useState is great for simpler state, things can get a bit messy when you have state that involves multiple pieces that are all connected, or a bunch of actions that can change it.
Okay, I'm starting to see the challenge.
Imagine trying to control the energy flow across different sectors of Planet Codex, each with its own set of reactors and systems.
Complex.
That's where useReducer comes in. It gives us a more structured way to handle those intricate state transitions.
So it's like having a master control panel to manage all those interconnected systems.
Precisely. With useReducer, we define actions that describe how the state can change.
Actions, okay.
And we have a reducer function
Reducer function.
that determines what the new state will be based on the action it receives.
Instead of directly changing state variables,
Right.
we dispatch these actions.
Yes. Clear signals of what we want to happen.
This all sounds very abstract. Can you give me a real-world example?
Of course. Let's say you're building a shopping cart for an e-commerce site.
Okay, a shopping cart.
Using useState for that might get pretty complicated.
Why is that?
Well, as you add features like adding items, changing quantities, discounts, calculating totals, each action could change multiple parts of the state. It could get messy fast.
Yeah, I can see that. So how would useReducer handle this?
Well, with useReducer, we define actions like add item or move item, update quantity, and so on.
Okay, clear actions.
And then our reducer function takes the current state of the cart and the action we dispatched, and then it returns the updated state.
So instead of directly changing the state variables, we dispatch these actions, and the reducer figures out what to do.
You got it. It makes the logic much clearer, more predictable, and easier to manage.
And I bet it helps with debugging, too.
Absolutely. This separation makes everything more transparent.
Okay, I'm starting to see why useReducer is so powerful for managing complex state. But what about performance? Remember those blinking lights from the source material?
Oh, yeah. The wasted energy. Our apps need to be efficient, just like Planet Codex.
Exactly. And the source mentioned a couple more hooks, useMemo and useCallback.
Ah, yes. Our efficiency warriors. They help us avoid unnecessary computations and make our apps run smoother.
Okay, let's start with useMemo. The source material says it's about remembering results. What does that mean?
Imagine the Planetary Defense Corps needs to calculate the optimal defense strategy.
Okay.
Complex algorithms, tons of data, resource-intensive stuff.
Sounds like it.
And if they had to recalculate every time something small changed, it would be a huge waste of energy.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very efficient.
So useMemo lets us store the results of those expensive calculations.
With a cache?
Exactly. As long as the inputs to the calculation haven't changed, we can reuse the stored result.
So we're not constantly recalculating things unnecessarily.
Exactly. And in our React apps, this means a smoother user experience.
Makes sense. No unnecessary re-renders, just snappy performance.
You got it. Now, useCallback is a bit different. It focuses on optimizing functions.
Functions, okay.
Particularly the ones we pass down as props to child components. Imagine the PDC sending instructions to a team of robots.
Robots, cool.
If those instructions changed every time, even slightly, those robots would have to reprocess everything, slowing them down.
And potentially causing problems.
Exactly. So useCallback remembers the function.
Remembers the function.
So as long as its dependencies haven't changed, it doesn't get recreated every time the parent component re-renders.
So we're avoiding those unnecessary re-renders in the child components.
You got it. This can make a big difference in performance, especially in larger applications.
This is incredible. We've gone from managing simple state to complex transitions to optimizing for efficiency.
And we're not done yet. There are even more hooks to explore.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention. What else is there?
Well, there's this one hook, useRef. It's a bit different, but just as powerful.
useRef, okay. The source material used this image of a sudden gust on Planet Codex, sending papers flying, and talked about useRef as an anchor of stability.
Yeah. It's a great analogy. Think of it like this. You're creating a dedicated storage space within your component.
A storage space for what?
To hold on to something, even as your component re-renders and things around it change.
So, while everything else is in flux, useRef provides this stable reference point.
Exactly. One common use case is managing focus on input fields.
Like when you submit a form and want the focus to automatically go to the first field with an error?
Exactly. With useRef, we can create a reference to that specific input field.
Okay.
And then after the form submission, we use that reference to programmatically focus on it.
So we're using useRef to hold on to that DOM element so we can easily manipulate it later.
Precisely. It's a lot cleaner than trying to manage it with state or props.
Makes sense. What other uses are there for useRef?
Oh, tons. You can store timer IDs, previous state values, even references to other components.
It sounds like a versatile tool.
It is. It really expands what we can do with React hooks. But we've got one more realm of power to explore.
Okay, I'm ready. What's this final level of React hooks mastery?
Custom hooks. These aren't built-in hooks like the ones we've been talking about.
Ooh, what are they then?
They're hooks that you create. You harness the power of all the built-in hooks we've learned.
Wow.
And combine them to make custom solutions for your specific needs.
The source material called the magical potions, letting you go beyond the given abilities.
I love that analogy. It really captures the idea. It's like you're an alchemist mixing different hooks to create something new.
So we can combine, useState, useEffect, useContext, all those things, and build our own custom solutions.
Exactly. Let's think about that shopping cart again.
Okay, shopping cart.
Imagine building a custom hook called useShoppingCart.
Use shopping cart, okay.
It would handle all the logic for managing the cart.
So instead of scattering that logic across different components, we have it all nicely bundled up,
Yes, and it could use any of the other hooks we need.
like useState or useReducer for managing the cart state.
Yep. Or useEffect to handle things like saving the cart to local storage. Even use context to share the cart data with other components.
That's amazing. We're building upon the existing hooks to create these higher-level tools.
Exactly. And those custom hooks make our code more organized, more reusable, and easier to work with.
This deep dive has been eye-opening. We've learned so much about React hooks.
And we did it all through the lens of Planet Codex. That definitely made it more fun.
It did. But as we come to the end of this deep dive, I'm wondering, what's next for Arin, our PDC cadet?
That's a great question. And, I think it reflects the nature of software development itself. It's a journey of constant learning and adaptation.
So even after mastering the basics of React hooks, there's always more to learn, more to create.
Exactly. Planet Codex is always evolving, and so is software development. There are always new tools and techniques emerging.
And the best developers are the ones who stay curious and keep learning, right?
Absolutely. The final challenge for Arin and for all of us is to never stop exploring the vast world of software development.
What a great message to end on. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more principle.
Oh,
I'm all ears.
the idea of side effects. It's closely related to useEffect, but it's a concept that can trip up a lot of developers. Yeah, side effects can be tricky. Think of it like this. In the pure world of functions, you have an input, a process, and an output. It's all nice and contained.
Like a mathematical equation. Predictable, straightforward.
Exactly. But in the real world of software, things aren't always that neat. We have external factors, dependencies, unpredictable interactions.
That's where side effects come in. They're those actions that happen outside that pure functional world.
Right. Things like fetching data from a server, updating the DOM, even just logging something to the console.
So those are all considered side effects.
Yes. And they're important because they can make our code harder to test and reason about.
Because they introduce this element of uncertainty.
Precisely. And that's where useEffect comes in. It helps us manage those side effects in a controlled way.
So useEffect isn't just about reacting to changes, it's also about taming those side effects.
Exactly. It's like having a dedicated space for those messy, unpredictable tasks, keeping them separate from our pure functional logic.
It's like we're drawing a line between the predictable world of functions and the unpredictable world of side effects.
I like that analogy. And by understanding that distinction, we can write better, more reliable code.
This is making a lot more sense now. So we've talked about all these powerful tools and concepts, but it's clear that with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. Just like on Planet Codex, where reckless energy manipulation could have disastrous consequences, we need to use hooks thoughtfully and carefully.
It's not just about knowing how to use them, it's about understanding when and why to use them.
And about writing code that's not just functional, but also elegant, maintainable, and performant.
This deep dive has been amazing. Not just learning about the technical details of React hooks, but also about their impact on how we think about software development in general.
It's about clarity, efficiency, and reusability, principles that apply far beyond just React.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into React hooks, let's leave our listeners with a final thought. Embrace the power of hooks, but use them wisely.
And remember, never stop learning and exploring.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We'll be back next time with another exciting deep dive into the world of software development. Until then, keep coding, keep learning, and keep creating.
Wow, we've really journeyed deep into React hooks. State management, side effects, custom hooks, immutability, it's a lot.
Definitely covered a lot of ground.
What strikes me, though, is how it's kind of like Arin's journey,
Yeah.
from rookie cadet to a seasoned defender of Planet Codex.
Oh, yeah, I see it. He starts with the basics, like any React developer, learns the tools, and then takes on bigger challenges, just like mastering those hooks.
It's pretty cool how we use that energy flow of Planet Codex as a way to think about optimizing a React app.
Analogies are powerful, right? They make the complex stuff easier to grasp.
Speaking of complex, remember earlier when you said React hooks are more than just tools? It's like a whole philosophy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Can we dig into that a bit more?
Absolutely. It's all about that shift towards declarative programming and composability. Right, right. With hooks, we're not telling React exactly how to do things. We're saying what we want to achieve.
Precisely. And we build our logic from these smaller, reusable pieces, like assembling a complex machine from a set of well-defined parts.
That's a great analogy. And that's basically what custom hooks are, right? Blueprints for specific problems.
You got it. We take that complex logic and package it into these elegant, reusable units. It's a game changer, especially as apps get bigger and more complicated.
Like Arin, with a library of custom hooks, ready to defend Planet Codex from any threat. Efficient and precise.
Exactly. That's the power we're talking about.
It's pretty amazing. But,
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility. Right?
Oh, absolutely. We have to be mindful of how we use these hooks.
We don't want to accidentally create a bunch of unnecessary complexity or slow down our app.
Just like on Planet Codex, messing with energy flow recklessly could have serious consequences.
So it's not just about knowing how to use hooks, but when and why.
Exactly. Writing code that's not only functional, but also elegant, maintainable, and performs well.
Finding that balance is key. This deep dive has been more than just React hooks. It's a new way to look at software development.
It's true. Clarity, efficiency, composability, these principles are important no matter what you're building.
It's not just about the technology. It's a whole mindset that will be useful throughout our careers.
Couldn't agree more. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into React hooks, let's leave our listeners with this. Embrace the power of hooks, but use them wisely.
Declarative programming, composability, side effect management, all those things we talked about, keep them in mind.
And never stop learning and exploring the world of software development. There's always something new to discover.
Well said. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the exciting world of software. Until then, happy coding.